press the home button. Hopefully you're getting sick of this, but it will train you well. Press the stop time button. If you notice on my screen and probably on most of your screens, time is always running at the current, like at normal rate. So it's keeping up with my computer clock. So if I press stop right now, I've stopped time. I'm pretty powerful that way. Now it says the time flow rate is shown directly to the right of the date and time toolbar using the drop down arrow. In the time flow rate, select 300 times. So I know Brad hasn't gotten to this, but here, this little thing, we call it a hamburger. So it looks like a little hamburger. I'm going to click on that, and you can see here the 300x. So if I click on that now, you'll notice that it starts running time a lot faster than what we experience in real life. Now you notice that my time is kind of doing these weird little dances. And this is what I was telling you about. If I just click on my render box, you'll notice that we'll actually stop that weird matrixy loop that happens, and things start. I think it's having a hard time communicating to the render box, and then it gets stuck in a weird loop pattern. My thesis, anyway. So anyway, that's what I asked you to do for the first part. And then I say, press the runtime forward button, and the time will run faster, and then press the stop button at nightfall. Now, this is going to take a long time for us to get to nightfall, but I hope you get the idea. I'm only at 4 o'clock, and nightfall is a lot further along. For the second part, discrete steps. I sometimes use these depending on what kind of lesson you're trying to teach, but I'm going to, using the drop-down arrow again, select the days. So I'm going to use the drop-down, and I'm going to select days down here. So you notice I'm in 1 day increments. I'm going to press the stop part here. And then it says, press the step time forward button and observe what happens. So if you look here, this is the run time forward. This button right here is the step time forward. And if you watch, let me get render box back up, get it to catch up. Okay, so they're happy. Now, if I press this step time forward, watch what happens to my days. I'm just stepping ahead by 1 day at a time, which can be very useful if you're doing like a moon lesson and you're trying to check out what the phase of the moon does over a night to night basis. Finally, I have us observe a solar eclipse. So I'm going to press the home button, select the viewing location, and I want to go to Columbia, South Carolina. So I'm going to go to the viewing location. We did this last time, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to press view from, and I'm now going to type in Columbia. Uh-oh, did I spell it wrong? Well, there's a lot of different things. I need to go find Columbia, South Carolina. So here's Columbia, South Carolina, and I'm going to view from that location. I don't feel like waiting. Again, the space bar, especially when you're making shows and you're trying to do things, the space bar is your best friend. Now, set the time to 2:35 p.m. Okay, so I'm going to go here to where it says 3. I'm going to back that down to 2. Now, I like using arrows, up and down arrows, but again, you can use anything you want. So I'm going to go to 2. And I'm going to type in 35, because that's a lot easier. And I need to set the date to August. So I'm going to click on July, and I'm going to press up, because that will take me to August 21st. And then I'm going to take us to 2017. I made this before the eclipse. And then I want to set the time flow rate to be 30 times. So under this little hamburger, remember that's where the 30 times lives. And I'm going to click on that, and I say let time run forward. And if you notice on my screen at least, and hopefully on yours, I'm actually getting an eclipse. So it's going to almost nighttime. You can see it looks like the sun's going down, but really right here in the middle, I don't know if you can see that. There's a nice eclipse happening. If I go to my render box, we should have a beautiful eclipse happening, but you guys can't see that. And this is how I would set up most of our shows. You want to go to a specific place at a specific time and see some of the cool stuff that happens. All right, that's really all I had for that exercise. So I'm going to unshare and turn it back over to Brad.
All right, so let me do the same here. So just kind of piggybacking off of what Steve mentioned there, you have the 2 different ways of running your time, multiples of real time or your discrete time steps. I typically, unless I'm looking for a very particular motion, like drawing an analemma, for example, I will use time flow. Just, if I want time moving fast, I'm just going to use, some multiple of real time, get it going. But the discrete time steps, if I want an analog or something, that you saw, you can do that and get the analog going. Now, something you might notice is, if you start running time with like the discrete time steps there, my screen actually went a little bit crazy. I don't know if it made it through Zoom there or not. But the value off to the side here, this 1 that I have, this is how long it's going to take to ramp up or down to the time flow that you're changing it to. So, if I have, so I'm going to go up to 3,000 times real time and I hit play, then it's going to ramp up to 3,000 times. And if I hit stop, it's going to slow down. And again, it's going to be hard to see on Zoom here, but hopefully you're seeing this on your systems, is that it's actually taking a second to start or to stop the time flow there. So this makes it look a little bit cleaner on the dome. It's not suddenly stopping or suddenly starting. But if you want to have things be very precise, like you're watching and you want to stop exactly when a certain object, you're watching Jupiter, you want it to be right on the meridian or something. And then what you would want to do is take this 1 here and just make it 0. In that way, there is no ramp up or ramp down time. It's just as soon as I hit play here, it's boom, instantly we're moving at 3,000 times real time. Hit stop, and we're instantly stopped. Make sense? So, multiples of real time, discrete time steps. You use what you want for whatever case you might be having going on. So it's astronomy. So depending on what you want to see, you're going to set the rate appropriately. So any questions on anything we've covered so far? The location, the time and date, or the time flow here? These are 3 key features here of Starry Night. So I just want to make sure that nobody has any questions before we move on. All right, I'm not seeing anything. Yeah, Jim, the commas don't really pop up there. What you'll probably find, Columbia is an interesting one. There are a lot more Columbias out there than South Carolina locations. So if you do a search just for South Carolina, I think you'll find Columbia pretty quickly there. All right, so what we're going to look at next is actually saving some of what we've done here so that we can utilize it later. These are what we call favorites. And this is going to be your bread and butter for your lessons. You're hardly ever are you going to turn your planetarium on, get the dome up there, the audience comes in, sits down, and then you just start doing everything completely live. You change your location, and then you set the time, and then you start doing this. Odds are you're going to have at least the bare bones of a few key scenes set up so that you can present much more easily. In fact, you might go so far as to completely automate it with ATM4, which is a great way of doing things. But at the minimum, you're going to want to have some favorites, some scenes set up ahead of time, because that will make your life so much easier. So we're going to go through that process here. I'm going to, let's change our location first off. So let's pick somewhere that's not Philadelphia. I'm going to actually go to one of the recent locations here, and I'm just going to pick Australia. And what's the key I can hit to instantly move me if I want to skip the transition? What can I do? It's also showing it right down here. Yes, space bar. Thank you, Paul. All right, so we're in Australia. And let's say I want it to be daytime in Australia. There are several ways I could do that, right? They're all going to be manipulating the time and the date up here. So in this case, I just want to quickly get into a daytime sky. So I'm going to click on AM, That's just going to instantly toggle me 12 hours into the future. And now I have a nice daytime sky in Australia. Notice that the view is very similar to what I have here in Philadelphia. This is not a typical Philadelphia horizon panorama. We'll get into how you can change that a little bit later. But what you're seeing here is just kind of the default image that Starry Night is going to draw there when you go somewhere on the Earth. So that's why it looks similar to Australia, but you can always or to Philadelphia. You can always verify that yes, we are indeed where we want to be. So if I want to save this as a favorite, I would just go up to the top here to the favorites menu, click on that, and just say I want to add a favorite. It's going to pop a window up. I don't know if you guys can see that window because I think can you see that? Yes? Oh, perfect. I didn't know if that would come through because I'm sharing the pre-flight window, but this is great. So I'm going to give that a name here of, maybe it's going to let me do that. You might not like it because I have Zoom going on here. But you can give it a name, whatever you want. You can also select the directory that you want it to go into. And when you're happy, you click on OK. And then it's going to populate that into your favorites window there. And I can now home my system. Give it a second. Back to Philadelphia. Load my favorite there. Just a little double click to reload. And we should get to Australia. Okay, so it's a very, very basic process here of creating your favorites. Just basically set the scene up the way you want it looking, because what a favorite does is it creates a snapshot of that system. So whatever you have up on the dome or on your preview window here, that is what gets saved into the favorite. In a little bit, we're going to start playing with some of the display options. If we want a constellation on or label something. And those things also will get saved into your favorites. So it's not just where you are and what's happening with the time and date and the time rate, but what do you see up there in the sky? So it's a way to set everything up ahead of time so that you can load your favorite, and then once you're there, you can move on. So if I load a favorite that I made the other day, Saturn here, what we should see is eventually the Saturn favorite pop up. I want to come back, click the favorite that I just made, and we'll be back to Australia. And it goes a lot faster when you're not on a laptop and you're not sharing through Zoom and also live streaming to YouTube. So hopefully this is a little bit faster on your machine. So questions on just kind of the basics of creating a favorite. You'll notice also under favorites, you can create a favorite folder. So I can, make a new favorite folder, drag favorites around. So you can have favorites, if you have multiple people using the system, you can all have your own favorite folders. You can have folders for specific lessons or age ranges, all that kind of stuff. And I can just, drag favorites in and have them populate into those folders there. So if you don't have any questions right off the bat here, I think Steve has kind of a simple exercise on favorites here. So I'll go ahead and let him take over for that.
Thanks, Brad. So I will link to the favorites in case you don't have it. It should be in the chat now. And then I'm going to screen share. The document itself. So you now should have that to follow along to. And once I give you guys a little bit of time, I'll walk through it. You probably could even use these favorites someday if you're ever doing shows on eclipses. I believe these are setting up for that. All right, I'd like to start just going through some of this stuff. The first thing I'd like to point out, though, if all of you are looking at your pre-flight, let me share that. So hopefully you can see my pre-flight now. Something I'd like to point out, at least on my computer, and I remember this in the past years, if you are highlighting the app favorites where it says read only, and you try saving into that folder, it will barf on you. I don't think it actually lets you save into the read only. So what you have to do is click on the user favorites and make sure that that's the folder you're going to try and save into. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's correct, Brad.
Yeah, the app favorites are actually saved in a different part of your computer.
Yeah.
That Windows doesn't like you having permission to write to. All of your user favorites are just in documents.
Yeah.
In documents.
So just make sure if you're noticing that they're not saving, that's probably the reason why. Here, I'm going to walk through some of these now, and hopefully we can all learn something. So press the home button. First thing I always like to do. I'm home. Next, set the viewing location to Denver, Colorado. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go to view from, and I'm going to type in Denver. There's Denver, Colorado, and I'm going to say view from selected location. Again, hopefully by now we all know. Spacebar, and here we are in Denver. All right. Set the time to 10:30 and the date to April 14th. So first thing I'll do is the time. I'm going to click on the 1. I like just typing in 10. And I'm going to type in 30. And I want PM. So we're here. I'll stop time because I don't want time to keep going while I'm doing the rest of this. And then I say set the date to April 14th. So I go to July. I'm going to just press down until I get to April, and then go back to the 14th. And I believe I say 2014. So hopefully we're all here. We have the date and time set correctly. And now I want to save this scene by selecting Save Favorite from the Favorites menu at the top. So I'm going to go to Favorites. I'm going to go to Save Favorite and call it something appropriate. For this, I'm just going to call this Denver 2014. Hit OK. But typically, if I'm giving any word of advice, we have thousands of favorites on our computer. Label and organize as well as you can. It will save you lots of grief in the long run. But for what we're doing right now, Denver 2014. Now, I do ask, because Brad showed you this, create a new folder by selecting the Add Favorites folder. So I'm going to go up to Favorites. I'm going to add a folder, and I'm going to call this Toot. Now, the next thing I do is say, click and drag the favorite you created into the new folder. So if I want to put this favorite into that folder, all I have to do is drag it. You notice when I start dragging, you notice that I get the highlight over. So I can actually drag this and put it in between the two. That's what this line would do. And I can put it in between things. But if I highlight over it, and you can see that it highlights the whole word, I can drop it in there. So now if I were to press this little down button, which would let me see the whole folder, I can actually see the Denver's in there. So that's an easy way to start organizing a lot of your favorites. Hopefully that makes sense. Now the next part, I call it fun on your own. I want you to go to Denver, Colorado at this time, this day. We're there because we have this. Center on the moon. Now, a lot of you haven't learned this part yet, but I'm gonna walk you through it. I'm gonna right click on the moon. And if you see there's a word called center, this is a little bit more advanced because we haven't gotten here yet, but right click on the moon and center it. You'll notice that your screen should start moving and centering the moon for you. Another part that we haven't quite done yet, because this is called fun on your own. I'm just doing this to give people who are bored a little something extra. Set the zoom to 2 degrees and save this file as a favorite. So we haven't done this yet, but if you remember from the very initial exercise we did, your zoom's up here. So to zoom in on it, I'm just going to press the plus button, and you notice I'm going to start zooming in on the moon. So to get to 2 degrees, I'm just going to keep going. You can see on my screen, at least, I'm at 10 by 10. I want 2. Somewhere in here, I'll go with 2. Now I want to save this as a new favorite. So I'm going to go up to Favorites. I'm going to say Save Favorite. Now it gives, I don't know if Brad went over this, but you'll notice that it says, do you want to save this and save over it? And I can replace it or I can save a new favorite. So I'm going to say new favorite, so I don't want to overwrite that. So I'm going to say Zoom in Denver. Not my best naming, but that's okay. So now I have a favorite created where I'm already zoomed in on the moon. If somebody asks me that they want to see the lunar eclipse, I have it all set up. And then I think I say to set the time to 30 times. I'm not very good at setting up time, so hopefully this works. And play time. Might have to go a little faster here, but. I don't want to go too fast and blow the world up. I think it's starting. I'm going to increase this to 60. I'm going to go even faster. Let's just go 300. So you can actually start, I don't know if you can see it on your computer, but on mine, I'm starting to get a lunar eclipse starting on the one side of the moon. Now it's really getting dark. So my time was much slower than it should have been. It would take a while. But there we go. We have a lunar eclipse all set up for a class. And of course, you can run time backwards if they want to see it go in reverse. And Brad, did you want me to go on to the next one? Saving with favorites with time moving?
Yep. Yeah, maybe give people a few minutes to work on that one, and then
sure. Let me share that with you all. So I'm going to now share the very next one. Let me put the link in the chat as well. This is a continuation called Favorites on the Move of what we were just doing, because it's all pretty related. And let me share that screen again. I think that was the right file, if I'm not mistaken. So take your time. If you have any questions, let me know. All right, without anyone telling me to stop, I'm going to walk through these and see how we all do. These are called favorites on the move. And what I'm going to show you and what I walked you through, hopefully you realize by now, if you did the exercise, that you can actually save favorites with time flowing and things moving. So press the home button. Oh, wait, let me share the correct screen. So press the home button. I've already homed it. I want to set my time to a nighttime sky around 10 p.m. Now, I'm going to cheat and show you guys a little easy way of doing this, which might come up later. Maybe I'm going to ruin Brad's parade. But if you click on this little hamburger right next to the date and time, you can actually go right to sunset. So you can see there's a whole bunch of things that are in there already. So I can go to sunset, and it already gets me to 8 o'clock or 8:30. So now if I just want to get closer to 10 o'clock, I can just click on the 8 and go to 9:30, and I'll call it close enough. Now it says save a favorite file. Oh, sorry. Set the time flow rate to 10 seconds and start time moving. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to seconds. I'm going to go to 10 seconds. And I have time moving, and I want to save a favorite right now. So I'm going to go favorites, save favorite. I don't want to replace my old favorite. I'll ruin my cool zoom in. So I'm going to do new favorite, and I'll call this sunset moving. Again, I'm not the best at making up names, I'm sorry. So sunset moving. And then what I want to do is just to show you guys that it's actually moving when I click on the favorite. If I go back to, let's say, the zoom in Denver. So here we are at the moon. But I'm going to go back now to that sunset moving, and you're going to hopefully see on my screen, I can see that time is now flowing. So you can save your favorites with motion, with time moving at any rate you want. So the next part, if you start to get really picky about this, or you want to start saving at the exact moment that something's going to happen, or right before an eclipse, there's a cool little way of doing this. So I'm going to press the home button again. I'm going to set the time flow rate to 30 seconds and press run time forward. So 30 seconds, it's going to start moving a little bit here. So I've gone to seconds. I'm going to change the 1 to 30. Oops. 30 seconds. And I want to save it now. And you'll notice that if you want to save something really quickly, I have this little Control S in here. Save a file using Control S. So if I actually hit Control S, it automatically brings up, it's the hotkey basically for saving. And now what it's done is it's taken a snapshot. Whenever I hit that Control S, it took a quick little snapshot, and you notice that time has stopped playing for a second. It's just trying to save this. So if I hit new favorite, 30 seconds, hit OK. Now, if I go back to that 30 seconds, you're going to notice that time is going to be playing pretty quickly, and I'll have a nice sunset. So it would be a nice file to have set up for a good sunset. So you can save favorites on the move, and I think it's a really powerful little tool. And that's all I had for that one. So I'm going to unshare, hand it back over to Brad.
All right. Everyone feeling fairly comfortable with favorites? You know, like I said at the very beginning there, this is going to be the cornerstone of your shows. You're going to be making a lot of favorites here. So recommend, you know, like Steve mentioned, organize them well, name them well. You know, having 50 Moon 1, Moon 2, Moon 3, Moon 4 favorites is not going to help you when in 6 months you want to go and change something in the show. So, all right, let us get into the display options. This is going to be the fun section here, because we're going to see a lot of things, you know, turn on, turn off, and whatnot. And a couple of you have messaged me privately, you know, hey, we have labels, you know, appearing, you know, when it turns dark, I see labels. Yep. We're going to go over how to turn those off. So, so, you know, like I said at the very beginning, display options essentially is anything that you have that's being displayed that you can see either in your preview screen or in your render box view. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to stick with pre-flight because that way you can actually follow along a little bit easier on what I'm actually controlling with. So So display options on mine happens to be here. Yours might be somewhere else, but you, like I said at the very beginning, these little hamburger icons here, you can move these windows around. You can rearrange how it looks if you want to. So display options, I typically start with the local view, just because there are a few kind of basic things here that are very obvious what they do. So the first thing that we'll look at is the daylight. So daylight, along with a lot of other things, has a little kind of pillbox to the side here. I click on that, it turns gray, and I have turned off the simulated daylight. So anything that has this little circle that you can click, it'll toggle between gray and blue. You're toggling whatever that option is on and off. So daylight is just adding a daylight shader on top so that it's simulating the sunlight in the atmosphere. So what this allows you to do is, if you don't care about that, you just want to see, okay, what's up right now? It's daytime, but what could we see if the sun wasn't there? This is a way to easily get that view. Another way that I use it often is to, if I'm moving time very quickly and I want to watch, say, annual motion, like I want to watch the planets over the course of a few years, how their motions go and whatnot. I don't necessarily want the sun coming up every once in a while and blowing everything away with the sunlight, the daylight. So I would probably turn daylight off so that even though the sun's up there, it's not distracting from what I'm actually trying to present, to show. So daylight's one that you'll use probably often. I use it a lot. There's a button for it at the top. So it's a little blue box there, the daylight. And Control D is the hotkey. So Control D, if you like to use your keyboard commands, Control D will toggle the daylight on and off. Also in here is the horizon, the local horizon. So I can turn that off. And all it does is just take away that horizon image from me. So typically I'm not going to do this unless it's nighttime. It's kind of boring just to see the daylight sky there. But what this allows you to do is see all the way down, your full field of view. So if you don't want anything distracting up there, you just want to get rid of the horizon, that's the way to do that. You just toggle it here, or it's the little tree button at the button bar at the top there, or Control H to toggle it on or off, if you like the keyboard commands like I do. So I have now, even though it's 3:38 in the afternoon, I have turned daylight off and I've removed the horizon. So if the sun wasn't up there and you couldn't see the clock, you wouldn't know that it was actually the middle of the afternoon here. A little bit more with the horizon. You'll notice that when I hover over horizon, it's actually the text turns blue. That means I can actually click on it and it will open up a properties window here that I can interact with the whatever this option happens to be, in this case the horizon. So anytime you have text that turns blue in the display options and you hover over it, that's telling you, hey, there's more information, more controls that you can manipulate here. With the horizon, the only thing I'm going to mention here, just as the kind of the introductory workshop, is that there are 3 ways that you can display the horizon image. So what we've been seeing typically as we've been flying around is it stays this particular image here, which happens to be this Kluane National Park. Personally never been, but and the reason we're seeing this is that it's because it's what we call the default horizon panorama. So the default panorama is what Starry Night uses if you haven't told it to use a different image. So typically we want this something fairly bland and nothing too iconic, like the Stonehenge panorama we saw earlier. Definitely not something that you want as your default panorama, unless you want to see Stonehenge everywhere you go on the Earth. So it's typically going to be something, kind of, some trees, the mountains, maybe a little too much for a default pan, but there are a few other panorama options that you can pick from. We'll see if Starry Night will let me open that up or not. I don't know if it will. But if you click on that, you should get a list of a whole bunch of horizon panoramas to pick from. There are a few generic forest ones, hills, plains. So pick something that's kind of generic. That's what you want for your default panorama. The location panorama, this is where you can assign an image to a very specific location. Like when we went to Stonehenge, we didn't see the default panorama, we saw Stonehenge pop up because that's one of the few that we have baked in already to Starry Night. When you go to Stonehenge, it actually uses the Stonehenge panorama to display up there. So if you on your home location, you have a panorama of your school or your museum, this is how you can attach that to your location. So you have whatever your city might happen to be called, and then you can choose the location panorama for that, and that will allow you to attach the panorama to your specific location. The document panorama, I'm not going to get into too much here, but essentially the default and location panoramas, once you save them, they're saved permanently. If you want to save a panorama that overwrites those two and you want it to save into a specific favorite, that's where document panorama comes into play. So an example I like to give sometimes is, you've gone through the work and you've attached your school's panorama to your home location, but now you want to come up with kind of a historical star show, what the stars looked like, a couple thousand years ago in your area, or you're doing, kind of the history of your town or your city. Probably don't want, modern day panorama showing up there. So what you would do is assign a document panorama that you would save favorites of. You would load the favorite. You would still be in your home location, but you would be seeing, older, maybe just woods, or if you have some older images that you could use for the panorama, that's how you could use the document panorama there. So that's how those panoramas work. So if you want to use those, you can. Let's see if it'll, there we go, post the window. So the big takeaways here is, this little pill lets you toggle on and off, and anytime the text turns blue as you hover over it, that means there are additional options that you can take a look at underneath that. So we're just going to quickly go through some of the other things here. And I think what we'll probably do, we have about 7 minutes left here, is we'll just kind of make our way through the options, and then our first session tomorrow. So this is our last intro session today. We have 2 more tomorrow, and our first one will start off with an exercise for display options. It'll be a good review, get you, kind of working through some of the stuff that we're finishing with today, and then we'll launch from there. So at the very top here, display options, the guides group, the very first one, on-screen info. If I toggle that on pre-flight, it's giving me, the altitude, azimuth, and the field of view. It's giving me that on my render box view as well. Not the most useful information, but if I click on-screen info, that should bring up a window. And one of the options on here is local time, which is, of course, not going to let me select. But local time lets you use the on-screen info for what most people use it for, which is a clock. So this is how you're able to get the time displayed onto the dome. So if you're doing like a phases of the moon, or the sun is tracing out in an lemma, or you're looking at planetary motions, and you want the audience to have an idea of how quickly time is flowing, you would check local time, turn everything else off, and then you would have a clock appearing up on the dome. So that can be a very useful one. The rest of your display, the guides options here, these are all your different coordinate systems. So you have your altitude and azimuth. So if you want to put up, what astronomers call the celestial meridian, the line going, north to zenith to south, that's where that is. Celestial guides is going to be your right ascension declination. So if you know anything about astronomy, you know all about right ascension and declination. Also has some fun things in there, like the circumpolar region that will put a circle up on the dome that will mark out objects that from your latitude will never go below the horizon, which can be handy. Ecliptic guides, this is your ecliptic coordinate system, and right there is the ecliptic itself. So if I just turn daylight off for a second here to make it a little bit easier, this is how you can get the ecliptic to show up on the dome there. And if you want to change like the color of the line, or you want to change the font of what's displayed, you just go into ecliptic guides here, and you have the color options, the font. You click on that, it'll open up another window for the font settings and so on. And then galactic and extragalactic, but very few people go into those and use those. Moving down, solar system is exactly what it sounds like. So if you want to, for example, label comets, this is going to label the bright comets that are currently visible from right here, this time from Philadelphia. Yeah, I could do the same thing with like planets and moons. It's going to label planets, moons, dwarf planets are going to be there as well. So you can label them, but keep in mind this is labeling the entire group, right? So pretty much most of what you're doing in options, if you're turning things on or off, it's going to apply to the whole group. So if we want to label like just the moon, for example, we'll cover that tomorrow. And then there are some other fun things in planets and moons that you can play with on your own time. Stars, you can do get the Milky Way up there, but mine, of course, is quite visible. And it's not going to let me. I'm pretty sure this is a zoom thing that's causing this to happen here. But if I can make it really bright, which it let me do, which was nice, we can now see the Milky Way here up in the preview window. So the Milky Way, what it can also do, you have about a dozen different wavelengths to choose from. This is just for the band of the Milky Way. You can shine through there. Constellations. So I want to throw up all the stick figures. This is how I can do that. If I want to do the illustrations, the illustrations show up. The labels, boundaries, all those are right there. This is going to show all of the constellations that are currently visible from your location. If you want to change any property, just hover over any of these. They all come up with the same window. And you can set the color for the stick figures. You can set the font. So if you don't want the blue font there, you can change that. And a few other things. If you want to put the boundaries for the constellations up there, change that color, you can as well. Deep space and options for other objects down here. Usually don't spend a lot of time here, just because they're either going to be, like if I turn on, let's see, like quasars, it's going to label some of the quasars that are currently visible right here. So it's either going to be like a database that's just marking locations, or it's going to be in what we call an image database, like Hubble images. If I have Hubble images turned on, when I zoom into a region of the sky, it will give me the Hubble image will show up. So if I zoom in on the Orion Nebula and I have Hubble images turned on, then we'll see the Hubble image of the Orion Nebula appear when we've zoomed in far enough. So if you're zooming in on like a nebula or some object that you're like, oh, well, I'm not seeing anything, I really feel like there should be some kind of image there, just take a look and make sure like you have Hubble images on, maybe Chandra if you want to look at a different wavelength, a few of these image databases. If those are all turned off, then you're not going to see anything when you zoom in on what you're zooming in on. For those of you who have labels all across your screen here, odds are it's the NGC IC database, and you probably have labels here toggled on. So if you toggle that off, or just the entire group, either way, that should take the labels off. And if that doesn't, if you still have some labels on, just take a look through deep space here, maybe other objects, but more than likely deep space, and just make sure you don't have something turned on that has labels turned on underneath it, because that's what's going on there. So hopefully that fixes you up. If not, let me know, and we'll take a peek. And the only other thing before we go on our break here are sky surveys. And these are just a small sample of all sky images that you can put up there. So if you want to put up, for example, the IRS infrared all sky survey, you can have that show up. The cosmic microwave background radiation, that one's there. So just a few different all sky images that you can display. And again, they're all sky, so anywhere you are on the Earth, you're going to see the appropriate view. So that was kind of a quick run through of your display options here. Again, main takeaways: you can toggle things on and off by the little pill shaped button there. Anytime the text turns blue, that means you have some properties that you can edit there. And like we saw with the Milky Way, if I scroll back down to stars, the Milky Way, if I have this on, I have a little slider here, and I can drag the slider around, and it's not necessarily just toggle on or off. I actually set it to however bright I want. So I have a little dim slider there. So, and then if it's not fully on or off and I mouse away, it actually leaves me a number there. Mine says 85%. So it's 85% maximum brightness. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask. I can stick around for a minute or two here. But we have a scheduled long break right now, because we know sitting in front of a computer screen is more tiring than it should be. So we have an extended break until 4:20. And at that point, we'll have kind of you don't really need to follow along. You kind of sit back and just watch. Dave Bradstreet, Scott, and I are just going to show you some of the newer features that Starry Night can do. So there are a few kind of fun things that you'll be able to do. Your preview suite can't do it right now, but the version we'll have for you after Institute, probably a couple weeks after Institute, we'll have all these new features baked into it, and we'll be getting this out to your planetariums as well shortly. So that's coming up after the extended break. So thank you, and stay around another minute or two if you have any questions, but then I will be closing this room.